I lied about dating his father in college. He sent the photos to every guest at our reunion. Hi Reddit, my name is Mia. My husband's name is Benson, and we have been married for 10 years. When I first met Benson, I was not looking for a relationship. I had just moved back to my hometown after being away for a while. My job at that was helping to organize local academic events, and it was during one of these that I met him. He was friendly, helpful, and always smiling. There was nothing unusual about him at first, but there was a calmness in his nature that made him easy to be around. Benson wasn't from the town originally. He had moved in for work and was still finding his way around. We started talking more after a few meetings. It began with small things, helping each other with tasks, staying behind after events to clean up, walking to the car park together. It wasn't fast, but it was steady. I didn't expect it to turn into anything serious, but it did. We started spending more time together outside of work, going for walks, eating together, talking about things we hadn't told many people, and all of that. What Benson didn't know was that years before I met him, I had a history I never planned to revisit. In fact, I thought I had buried it well enough that it would never come up again. But life has a way of circling back, especially when you least expect it. Back in college, I had a teacher named Mr. Thomas. He was older, in his early 40s at the time, quiet but respected. Most students admired him, but not many dared to get close to him. He wasn't the type to joke around or be overly friendly. He kept his distance, and everyone respected that. But during my final year, something changed. I was always the student who stayed back after class, helping to arrange chairs, asking questions, trying to stay ahead. Mr. Thomas noticed. He started giving me extra reading, asked for my help with organizing his notes, and even trusted me to sort out his lesson plans. At first, it all seemed harmless. I felt proud that he trusted me that much. But slowly, things shifted. He began to ask more personal questions. At first, they were about my plans for the future, but then they became more about my life, my family, what I did on weekends. I didn't see it as odd at the time. I thought he was just trying to help. But by the time I finished school, we had grown much closer than anyone knew. After graduation, we kept in touch. He would check in now and then, offer guidance, and sometimes we would meet up to talk. It was during one of those meetings that things crossed the line. I didn't know what to call it at first. I was out of school, technically an adult, and he wasn't my lecturer anymore. But even then, I knew it wasn't something I should be involved in. Still, I didn't stop. For about 3 years, we met in secret. It wasn't a relationship in the regular sense. There was no public acknowledgement, no photos, no open affection. I knew that Mr. Thomas was married, but I never asked anything about his family. At least, to the best of my knowledge, he wasn't the type to share about his family. We kept everything quiet. He was cautious, always careful about where we met and what we said. I think he knew what it looked like, even if I didn't. At the time, I told myself it was just a phase, that we were two adults who had something private and mutual. But deep down, I knew it was never going to last. Eventually, it ended. I got tired of hiding. I wanted something real, something open. I didn't want to keep living in the shadows, sneaking around and pretending like we were nothing. When I told him I was done, he didn't fight it. He just nodded, said he understood, and that was it. No arguments, no begging. We both walked away from it, or so I thought. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not my friends, not my family. I kept it buried, convinced it would never come back. I moved on, focused on my career, and stopped thinking about it. That was until I met Benson. When Benson and I started getting serious, I never thought to mention Mr. Thomas. Why would I? That part of my life was over. I didn't see any reason to drag it into something new. Besides, there was no way Benson would ever cross paths with him, or so I believed. It wasn't until we got serious together for over a year that I realized how small the world could be. Benson mentioned one evening that his father was moving back into town. I didn't think much of it until he told me his father's name. I lost my mood when I heard it, Thomas. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but when I asked for more details, I knew it wasn't. Benson's full name had always been Benson Thomas, but it never occurred to me that his father could be the same man I had once been involved with. Benson also couldn't believe that his father taught me in college after I told him. He knew about the college I graduated from, but it didn't occur to him that Mr. Thomas taught me a course. Obviously, Mr. Thomas had tutored a lot of students, not just me. The first time I saw Mr. Thomas again was at a family dinner. Benson had invited me to meet his father officially. I was nervous, but I tried not to show it. Benson and Mr. Thomas aren't really that close. According to Benson, his father and him don't really have a strong father and son relationship. They were just casual. Benson didn't really say exactly why that was. When Mr. Thomas walked into the room, he froze for a second when he saw me. But just like the careful man he had always been, he quickly masked it and carried on as if nothing had happened. As courtesy demands, we exchanged pleasantries like a normal student and lecturer. Nothing extra. Dinner was tense, at least for me. I avoided his eyes, spoke politely, and tried not to reveal anything. Mr. Thomas played along, pretending like we were just a normal student and lecturer. Mr. Thomas also asked about my life after school and all of that. Benson didn't notice a thing. He was happy that I was getting along with his father, and I didn't want to ruin that. After that night, I told myself it was just a strange coincidence, and that I could handle it. But seeing him again brought back memories I thought I had let go of. There were photos. During our time together, Mr. Thomas had taken a few private pictures, nothing wild, just casual moments we had shared when no one was watching. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now that he was part of Benson's life, I started to worry. I never imagined Mr. Thomas would keep those pictures, let alone use them. But I also never imagined he would one day be my father-in-law. Yes, we eventually got married. A quiet wedding, simple and small. I'm not the type that really likes a grand wedding. I usually do my things simple, and my husband also has the same features as I do. Benson was excited to build a life together, and I convinced myself that I had moved past everything. At first, I was skeptical about going on with the wedding, but after a few thoughts, I decided to do it. I told myself that Mr. Thomas would respect the boundary, then that I was his son's wife. But there were still times I caught him watching me too closely, and sometimes, when we were alone, he would say something that reminded me of the past. Nothing direct, but just enough to make me uneasy. I tried my best and compacted myself. There were times Benson caught his dad staring at me, and he asked if everything was okay, which Mr. Thomas agreed to was okay. Over time, I noticed Benson asking more questions. He became suspicious. He was curious. He once mentioned how I seemed a little quiet and uneasy whenever his father was around. I laughed it off, blamed it on nerves, and changed the subject, but I could see that he was paying attention. I never knew Benson tried everything possible to figure out what had happened. He went as far as searching my belongings and that of Mr. Thomas, where he got old pictures of the both of us. I tried to stay away from Mr. Thomas as much as I could, but family events made that difficult. I thought I could keep the secret buried forever. But something happened. After 2 years of marriage with Benson, Mr. Thomas kept making things difficult for me. Anytime Benson wasn't around, he would show up at our place unannounced. He would tell me how much he had missed me and wanted us to continue whatever we had before I met Benson. He told me I had nothing to worry about because Benson wouldn't find out anything. I wasn't in support of what Mr. Thomas was telling me then. Though his presence always made me uneasy, I couldn't resist him either. I found him charming, and I had missed the way he made me feel any time we got intimate. He was really good at that. That was one of the reasons I tried to avoid him anytime Benson and I went visiting because I couldn't control myself. Mr. Thomas, on the other hand, knew about this weakness and used it to his advantage. For 3 years after Benson and I got married, I was cheating on him with his dad. Isn't that disgusting? I'm not even proud of it, though. Mr. Thomas and I kept meeting at his place and mine sometimes anytime Benson wasn't around. I enjoyed every bit of it, and I couldn't stop. At that time, I didn't know what got into me that I enjoyed Mr. Thomas's presence more than his son, Benson. But somehow we stopped. I broke up with Mr. Thomas again. That was the second time, and I told him I couldn't continue with the affair because my conscience was dealing with me. As expected, Mr. Thomas didn't say anything or tried to convince me not to leave the relationship. He respected my decision. The secret of our relationship back in college, and that after my marriage with his son, I tried to bury them and move past it. But then came the reunion. The college I graduated from was hosting a 10-year reunion. Benson encouraged me to go. I wasn't excited about it, but I agreed. mostly to keep up appearances. I hadn't been back in years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Before the event, I posted a few old photos on social media. Nothing serious, just memories from my school days. I made the mistake of tagging a few people, and somehow Mr. Thomas must have seen them. That was when everything started to unravel. A few days before the reunion, Benson was on his phone more than usual. He didn't say much, but I could tell something was off. Benson had questioned me about some things, but I didn't open up. His questions were weird and uncomfortable. Benson asked me if I have ever dated older men in the past, or had a fling with one at any point in time, maybe in college or high school. I didn't know what to say. It felt like Benson had known something. That night, I was uneasy because of the questions my husband was asking me. He went ahead to ask me if I had any closer relationship with his dad, or even something more than that. At that moment, I denied it and even went ahead to tell him how I detest ladies that date older men, not to talk of getting closer to his dad in college. Benson, on the other hand, seemed not satisfied with my answers. He looked like he knew something and wanted to confirm. I asked him what was wrong, and he said nothing, but his tone had changed. He was distant, quiet, and seemed like he was thinking too much. I could remember one night when Benson came back from wherever he went to and started asking me questions about what Mr. Thomas was like during my college days. He knew that his dad taught in the same college I graduated from, but I was surprised why he all of a sudden wanted to know what his father was like. Those questions made my heart pound so fast that I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. For Benson not to suspect anything, I told him that he was just a strict lecturer and that was all, and I continued with what I was doing. Benson proceeded to ask questions if Mr. Thomas was the type that liked to take pictures with his friends or students. At that moment, I almost choked on my wine on hearing that question. I asked him why he wanted to know if his dad liked taking pictures, and he responded by saying he was just curious. Benson also asked me what my opinion on infidelity was. At that moment, I started sweating profusely and asked him why he was asking me those questions. Benson asked if his questions got me uncomfortable, which I said yes, and he asked why. Guys, I was thinking of what to say. Then I told him that I detest cheating and wouldn't dare to cheat on him. Benson proceeded to ask if I discovered that he had cheated or was cheating on me, what would be my reaction. I told him that I wouldn't forgive him that easily. Immediately, Benson said perfect, that was what he was going to do also. I told Benson that there wouldn't be any need for that, because I had never cheated on him and trust him he wouldn't cheat. Somehow that day, I was able to escape, but I didn't know what was installed for me. 5 days after that day, the reunion came, and that day I was very nervous. When we arrived at the reunion, the air was different. People were looking at me strangely, talking in hushed tones and pointing when they thought I wasn't looking. The reunion was just the beginning of a storm I hadn't seen coming. As I walked through the hall, trying to act like everything was normal, I felt that something was off. Benson didn't say much when we arrived. The quiet whispers made me nervous, but I told myself it was just the usual small-town gossip. People always found something to talk about at reunions, after all. I ignored the weird behavior from some of my old colleagues and chatted with the ones that were accommodating. Not long into our discussion, I was handed the phone to see something, and that was when the real truth hit me. One of them showed me a photo. At first, I thought it was a mistake or a weird coincidence, but the moment I saw it, I felt my heart drop into my stomach. It was me, no mistake about it, sitting on Mr. Thomas's couch, close to him in a way that made everything I'd tried to forget resurface. His hand was casually resting on my shoulder, and my head was on his chest in a way that looked too intimate for comfort. The timestamp was unmistakable. It was right after graduation, the very time I had tried so hard to bury. The picture was taken because Mr. Thomas had requested it. He wanted me to feel special for graduating from college with good grades. That night we had fun together, so I didn't deny that photo. Benson was still by my side, but I could feel him retreating even before I saw the photo. He didn't have to ask. He didn't need any more evidence. His face twisted into a look I had never seen before. It was a mix of confusion, hurt, and betrayal. I hadn't even noticed him step closer, but there he was, waiting for an explanation. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The words that had been building up inside me for so long felt trapped in my throat. I wanted to explain, to tell him that I hadn't planned for any of this to happen, but the truth was out in front of us now. It was all laid bare, and there was no turning back. I wanted to say something, anything that would make him understand. But how could I explain something so complex, so deeply buried, in a few sentences? How could I make him see that what had happened with Mr. Thomas was a mistake? A mistake that I had long regretted, one that I'd tried to move past. But the damage was done. Benson had already seen it. He took the phone from my hand and stepped back. Immediately, Benson asked me how long was I going to hide that from him. His question caught me off guard, and I didn't know how to answer. It wasn't about hiding it from him. It was about trying to forget it myself. Plus, Benson didn't seem surprised or shocked at that time. But then the past had caught up to me in the most painful way possible. And it was taking everything I had not to break down right then and there. I told Benson that I didn't know how to tell him, and that it was something I should have left behind. I tried to make him understand that it was over before I met him, and I never wanted it to come between us. I never meant to hurt him too. Benson didn't say anything for a long time. I saw his hands tighten around the phone, the image of his father and me still staring back at him. In front of everyone, Benson yelled at me and asked me why I didn't tell him. He said that was his father, and I didn't bother to tell him after getting to know who Mr. Thomas was to him. To make matters worse, I lied to him after he had his suspicions. Benson said if that was a mistake like I claimed, then why did I cheated on him with his dad for 3 years after we got married? He told me that I lied about dating his father, and even had the audacity to meet up with him after marriage. At that moment, I wished I could disappear into the crowd of people around us. I wasn't sure if I was ready to relive that part of my past, especially not in front of Benson. But I knew I had no choice. The truth had already been exposed, and I had to face it. How Benson found out about my affair with his dad was something I couldn't imagine. Mr. Thomas and I were extra careful with our meetups. After a few seconds, I was finally able to say something, at least to defend myself. I admitted to having a thing with his father, but told him it wasn't a real relationship and that it was something I should never have been involved in. I also told him that it was over, and I thought I had put it behind me. Benson was trying to process what I said to him at that moment. He looked at the photo again, then back at me. His eyes were filled with something I couldn't name, but it was enough to make me feel like I had just shattered everything we had built. The man I had fallen for, the one I thought I knew so well, was now standing in front of me as a stranger. And I could see the trust we had shared breaking apart with every second that passed. Benson told me that he doesn't know if he could just forget it. His words cut through me, but I knew he had every right to feel that way. I had kept secrets, and those secrets were now threatening to destroy everything we had worked for. The past was coming back to haunt us, and it was clear that Benson wasn't sure how to handle it. I kept saying that I didn't want to hurt him, and thought I could leave it behind and never bring it up, and realized that I should have told him sooner, and not him finding out the way he did. Benson didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, as if he was trying to find the words that would make sense of it all, and I couldn't blame him. There was no simple explanation for what had happened between me and Mr. Thomas. No way to make it right in an instant. All I could do was stand there, waiting for Benson to decide what he wanted to do with the truth that had been forced into the open. After a few minutes, I realized that the longer we stood in silence, the harder it would be to repair the damage. And even if we talked about it, even if I explained everything in detail, there was a chance that things would never be the same again. After a while, Benson told everyone that he got to know about my relationship and affair with his dad a few weeks before. He added that what angered him the most was the fact that I wasn't honest with him when he kept asking me questions about Mr. Thomas, who was his father. Everyone at that moment was surprised and started making side comments, calling me all sorts of horrible names. I was pissed, mad, angry, but at the same time regretted why I had kept it away from Benson. My husband also added that something made him search through his father's belongings for a few weeks and saw lots of photos of his dad and me together. What got him upset was that I was the lady his dad kept sending money, which ended up causing an issue with him and his mom. Benson said he kept an eye on me after noticing how uneasy I was whenever his dad was around, but didn't find anything, at least not immediately. He told everyone that what prompted him to search his dad's belongings was because he was looking for a document for a job contract, a family document though. His dad gave him permission to do it. It was in that process that he came across lots of pictures of me and his dad. Benson said that he dug further and discovered that I was the mistress who caused his parents' divorce. He added by saying that what broke him the most was that I had an affair with his dad after we got married. He got curious after he found the photos and wanted to know more, and so he went through his father's phone and saw the horrible chats with Dad. To confirm everything, he went through my phone and saw everything. For some strange reasons, Mr. Thomas gave Benson access to his things. He had forgotten that he had hidden the photos there. Me, on the other hand, was shocked to hear Benson said I was the cause of his parents' divorce after he told me that he wasn't close to his dad because he didn't show up in his life. Then, Benson said that he had said that because he didn't want to be reminded of what actually happened. He said that he promised himself never to talk about it because of the pain and trauma it had caused for his mom and how it affected him. Benson began telling everyone that his father had a secret affair with a young lady, but they didn't know who it was because Mr. Thomas was extra careful. Mr. Thomas kept sending money and never paid any bills at home. At that time, Benson was far from home and couldn't really help because he was also a student. Benson, Mom, and Dad quarried each day, and that resulted in their divorce. Benson, on the other hand, swore to deal with the lady if he eventually gets to know her. Unfortunately, I happened to be his longest enemy he kept searching for. Of course, he was devastated when he came across those photos, more devastated when he learnt that we had an affair. I, on the other hand, didn't open up to him or confess my infidelity. If I had done that, maybe things wouldn't be this bad. Benson said he planned a way to deal with me for lying to him, and so he sent those photos to everyone in the reunion to see. It came from a place of anger and frustrations. I tried apologizing to Benson, but he turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the reunion hall, surrounded by people I hadn't seen in years. At that moment, I felt numb, as though the ground beneath me had shifted, and I was unsure of where I stood anymore. The reunion was no longer a celebration. It had become a battlefield, one where I had just lost everything I had hoped for. The tension in the air got deep after Benson walked away. I stood frozen in place, unsure whether I should follow him, give him space, or let him decide what came next. My hands were shaking, still holding the phone. The image of Mr. I wouldn't have known that Mr. Thomas didn't take care of his household responsibilities. He looked like a responsible person back then. I couldn't imagine that I was seen as a homebreaker back then. What got worse was that I had an affair with him. At that moment, I looked around, but it felt like the people were just a blur. Faces that I hadn't seen in years, people I used to call friends, now looked like strangers. They were no longer the familiar faces of my past. They had become witnesses to my downfall, and I could sense their curiosity and their judgment. At that point, it was no longer just a reunion. It had turned into something darker, and I was caught in the middle of it all. I kept asking myself, what had I just done? How had I let it get this far? I thought I could bury that chapter of my life. I thought I had moved past it. But the truth was, it had never really gone away. It was always there, waiting for the right moment to resurface. The shocking part of it was that I was my husband's biggest enemy. Imagine marrying the enemy he had waited on to take his revenge on. I, on the other hand, I was stupid to have had an affair and to not have opened up when he kept asking those questions. Maybe he might have had a change of mind and not take out his revenge. At that moment, I thought to myself that I needed to get out of there. I needed air. When I stepped outside, I stood there for a moment. My hands were shaking and I didn't know what to do next. I looked around the parking lot to find Benson's car, but it was nowhere to be found. I didn't want to face him, not like that, but I had no choice. I had to fix it, though. I walked down the driveway toward the back of the building, hoping to find him alone. A lot of questions were going on in my head. I kept saying, what would I say? How could I explain everything? Would he even listen to me after everything that had happened? It felt like the foundation of our relationship had been shattered in an instant, and I wasn't sure if I could rebuild it. After a few steps, I saw him. He was sitting on the edge of his car and was lost in thought. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. He didn't look up when I got closer, and for a moment, I thought about turning back. But then I reminded myself that I couldn't run away from this. I had to face him no matter how painful it was. I called out to him, but he didn't look up, but I could see his hands gripping the edges of the car. I hesitated and wasn't sure of what to do next. I wanted to say something, anything, to make him understand. But I didn't know where to start. Finally, at some point, I managed to tell him that I never meant for this to happen, and that I didn't want to hurt him in any way. I also told him that I didn't want this part of my past to come back. But it did, and I was so sorry. I also added by telling him that I never should have kept it from him and thought I could leave it behind. But I realized that it was a mistake, a huge mistake. He still didn't look at me. Benson asked why I didn't tell him and decided to have an affair with his dad out of all the men in the world. He told me that he couldn't trust or forgive me because I lied to him. I protested by telling him that I didn't lie, and I never meant to lie to him. I honestly didn't know how to tell Benson. I was afraid that I could lose him if I opened up. I thought if I just kept quiet about it, maybe it wouldn't matter. But it does, doesn't it? And I see now that I was wrong. Suddenly, Benson stood up and turned to face me. I could see the hurt, anger, and confusion in his eyes. He asked me how could I expect him to forgive me after everything I had kept from him. He told me, just like I told him how I would react if I found out that he was cheating, is the same way he was going to react to my infidelity. But it was going to be spicy. I asked what he meant by that, and he said he was not just going to forgive me easily, but going to divorce me. The words hit me, and I felt my world had ended. My words were used against me, and in that moment I realized that I had set my own downfall. I had lost him, my marriage, and everything. I kept begging him to please forgive me for everything, but he just kept quiet. Benson looked at me one last time and told me that I was going to hear from Mr. Lawrence, the family lawyer, before getting into his car and driving away. The reunion was over for me, and I wasn't sure if Benson and I would ever be able to pick up the pieces of what we once had. The aftermath of everything was still too raw, too painful to comprehend. But one thing was certain: whatever had been between us was shattered, and I didn't know if there was a way to put it back together again. I wanted to scream, to release the pent-up frustration and confusion that was inside me. But no sound came out. It felt like the world had silenced me, as though nothing I could say would change anything. His revenge was hurtful. Why did Benson have to expose me like that? Sending the pictures of me and my lecturer to my colleague was bad. I can't stop thinking about it. My whole life is a mess. Update. Hello, Reditters. It has been some time since everything fell apart, and I wanted to give an update for those who might be wondering where things stand now. Life looks very different, and in many ways quieter than before. After the reunion, things between Benson and me could not be repaired. He left that night and didn't come back. A few days later, he returned only to pack all of his things. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask questions. There was just silence between us, and in that silence, I knew we were finished. The divorce happened quickly. There wasn't much to divide and no children involved, so we didn't drag things out. When the papers came, I had no choice than to sign them. Also, nothing was given to me after the divorce was finalized. I didn't try to explain myself again. I felt like I didn't have the right to fight for something I had already broken. Benson has moved on, at least physically. I heard through a mutual friend that he found a bigger apartment in the city. As for me, I left the house not long after him. The house was sold by Benson, and I didn't smell any penny from it. After all, Benson was living there before we got married. He told me I shouldn't be entitled to any of his properties. I haven't spoken to Mr. Thomas since the reunion. We never said goodbye. He disappeared from my life as quickly as he had entered it, and I didn't try to stop him. There's nothing left to say between us. That part of my life feels distant now, like a chapter I read once and didn't understand until the very end. Was I mad at him? Yes, I was, and still is. I can't just picture the fact that I was an instrument that broke a once happy family. Mr. Thomas didn't seem like someone that had an unhappy home at that time. Thinking about it makes me want to throw up. This was not the life I had imagined for myself. Mr. Thomas never bothered to see me and apologize to me for losing my marriage because of him. He owes me a big apology for this. I blame him and also blame myself for actually agreeing to date him back then and have an affair with him. How did I end up this way? I think about Benson every day. Not in a hopeful way, but in a quiet, heavy way. He was the one person who gave me a real future, and I threw it away. I don't expect him to forgive me. I don't expect him to come back. I just hope, wherever he is, he feels lighter than I do. I wish I could fix things back to normal. Dating Mr. Thomas was a huge mistake. I should have told my husband about this horrible past, especially when his father played a role in it. What upset Benson the most was my dishonesty. But you all wouldn't blame me that much anyway. I never would have thought Mr. Thomas was not taking care of his responsibilities. My affair with him also was a mistake. I guess I will have to deal with the consequences of not being truthful. This whole issue has taught me a big lesson. It is better to say the truth no matter how bitter or sweet it may sound. This is the life I made. This is what it looks like after everything falls apart. And this is me, learning how to live with it. It hasn't been funny, but I guess it wouldn't be this bad either.